Hi, a very warm welcome to my Santa tutorial. We're inflating all the quick links to 4.5 inches, which is 4 strokes of the Qualatex hand pump. I like to put a twist in the neck. So later on in this video, we are going to move on to using the digital inflator. Okay, so tie these together. But I just want to give you options, just in case you don't have the digital inflator that I'm using, or if, like many balloon artists, you prefer the hand pump. There are a lot of us about. So I'm now moving on to the white quick links, again, 4 strokes of the hand pump. Tie together. Oh, that one's got a hole in. I'll have to find another one. Put a twist in the neck, grab hold of one of your duplets, wrap that around just to make a cluster of 3, okay? And then we can connect our flesh-coloured duplets. Okay, so that's what you've got. Next, I'm using white 5-inch rounds, and I'm going to be inflating 5 of these to 3.5 inches. So just 2 strokes of the hand pump. So round those off, tie together, make another one of these. Just round that off and tie that into one of your clusters, one of your duplets. Okay, and then we can connect the duplet to the cluster of 3 to form a cluster of 5. You're going to need a 5-inch round in a skin tone, inflate to 4 inches or 3 strokes of the hand pump and tie. Position your quick links so that you've got the 2 skin tones together and the white ones together. And then take your cluster of 5, place it on top. So you want one 5-inch to be in between the 2 quick links. Take one of the necks, pull that up, wrap it through and wrap around in a figure of 8 motion. Okay, that's just going to connect everything together. We can turn this over, we can take the blush 5-inch round, pull that through to the back and again wrap around. So that's also connecting the structure together. Okay, you can just let that go and there you've got the start of your Santa face. Inflate 5 5-inch rounds to 3 inches. And if you're using the hand pump, that's just 1 stroke of the hand pump. Okay, just 1. If you're using the Legenda, as I am, I've got the timer setting to 0.4. Just round that off and stretch out the latex just to bring out the shine a little bit. Tie those 2 together and inflate the rest in the same way. Then take your duplet and connect it to the cluster of 3 just by wrapping around, okay? I've set my Legenda to 0.3. This is for the 2-inch balloons. Okay, and then just wrap everything together to form your cluster. Take the larger cluster and place the smaller cluster on top and then use one of the necks just to wrap and connect everything together, okay? Got one more 5-inch round, sized to 2 inches. Okay, and just wrap that into the centre and wrap around. Okay, so that's what you've got, and you want to make another one of these with the same sizes. We're going to inflate our next cluster of 5 to 3.5 inches or 2 strokes of the Colourtex hand pump. I've increased the setting on my timer to 0.8. Tie together. Make another one of these. Okay, and tie this one directly into the duplet. Okay, and connect the cluster of 3 to the duplet. Okay. For the 3-inch cluster, I've changed my setting to 0.4. Connect those together. So that's our 3-inch cluster of 5. I've changed my timer to 0.3 to inflate the 2-inch balloons. Wrap those together. And then inflate a single balloon to 3 inches, and I've changed my setting to 0.4. And tie that off. 3.5 inches, 3 inches, 2 inches. 3.5 inches, 3 inches, 2 inches, 3 inches. Flatten out the largest cluster and then place the 3-inch cluster on the top. Pull the neck and nozzle, pull the neck and nozzle through, wrap it round and tie together. Okay. Take your smallest cluster, place that on the top and pull a neck and nozzle through to wrap around. And you can also pull one from the top, wrap it around. Okay, that's going to connect everything together, and then take your single balloon, pull it into the center. I take it down to the row below and then back up to that first row. Okay, so we only need one of these. So we're going to tie the largest cluster onto the middle quick link. Okay, so pull that quick link tip into the center of that first tier, wrap around a couple of times, and then take hold of one of the nozzles and actually tie that on. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing at the sides. So just take the air out of that tip. I did that, I just pinched hold of the tip, ran my fingers along that to take the air out. Pull that into the center of the largest cluster, wrap it around a couple of times, and then find a neck, a nozzle to tie onto. Okay, because I found with this, with this design, if you don't tie the tip of the quick link onto the nozzle, these sections will ping off later on when you're working. Okay, so we'll do the same thing. Pull that into the cluster of 5, the largest one. Wrap the quick link tip around a couple of times. Find a nozzle and tie on. Okay, so that's what you've got. We're going to inflate the next clusters to 4.5. My setting is 1.6. The next cluster we're sizing to 4 inches, and I've changed my setting to 1.2. This next cluster is sized to 3.5 inches, so I've changed my setting to 0.8. This next cluster, we're sizing 3 of the balloons to 3.5 inches and 2 of the balloons to 2 inches. And these 2 balloons we're sizing to 2 inches, so that's setting 0.3. And just stretch those out a bit to bring out the shine. Okay, so you need the 2 smallest balloons to be side by side. when you're placing this cluster. We've still got more clusters to inflate, but if you're at all concerned that you're going to get confused and forget what size you've inflated the clusters to, we can start to build up the design now, and that will help you avoid doing that. So just wrap a 260 into the largest cluster. So this is the 4.5 cluster, and I'm actually going to just tie that together. Okay, so I've tied that on. Next, I'm taking the 4-inch cluster, placing that on the top, pulling that 260 through, wrapping around a couple of times. Then I'm taking the 3-inch cluster, putting that on the top, pulling that 260 through, and then this is the last cluster that we inflated. So we want these 2 little bubbles on one side, okay, next to one another, and you want to pull that through and wrap around a couple of times. Okay, so that's everything that we've inflated so far, and now it's all connected together. You're not going to get mixed up with, you know, having lots of different clusters inflated and wondering, you know, where the heck you are with things. For this next cluster, we're inflating 3 balloons to 3 inches and 2 balloons to 2 inches. So I've changed my timer to 0.4 for the 3-inch ones. Tie together. Two, we're inflating to 2 inches. I've changed my setting to 0.3. So again, we wrap the 2 together, and you want the 2 small balloons side by side, and we're going to place them, this cluster on top here, and just wrap that in. And we want the small balloons to be close to one another, so just wrap that around a couple of times. Because this is what is, these smaller balloons are what is going to give the slight curve to the Santa hat. For the next cluster, we're inflating 2 balloons to 3 inches and 2 balloons to 2 inches. So this is only 4 balloons in this cluster. So that's 0.4 setting for the 3-inch balloons. And 2 at 2 inches, that's 0.3. For me anyway, it might be slightly different on your machine. So wrap these together. And again, we want the 2 small balloons side by side. Just place them on the top, over the top of the 2 smaller balloons. Wrap around a couple of times. Okay, so we've got our original 2 small balloons, then another small balloon, then more small balloons, and that's giving the curve. For these last 3 balloons, I want to size these to about 2.5 inches. So I'm inflating to 0.4, and then I'm just letting a little bit of air out and just sizing these by eye. Okay, they're not perfectly the same size, then that doesn't matter. Okay, and then these are going on the top, so just wrap those in. Okay, so you've got a Santa hat with a nice curve to it. Next, inflate a white balloon to 4 inches. So for me, that's 1.2. And we can attach this to the top. So you can wrap that into the top cluster. And if you want to just be extra cautious, you can tie that on. Next, take a 260 in white. Don't need to inflate it all the way. Tie. And I'm just going to use that to encircle the base of the pom-pom. Okay, so I like to put a twist in there, wrap that neck and nozzle round a couple of times, cut off the end and tie. Okay, and then we can trim off these messy bits. Take another 2 6-inch quick links and inflate these to 4 inches. My setting is 1.2. So tie these singly and then just pinch the air out of the tips of the quick links and then tie them together. Take your Santa head and we're going to wrap the quick links into the balloon here. So it's the first layer of the middle section below the quick link, and we're just going to wrap that in there. Wrap it over to connect it, okay, and then we're going to use the necks and nozzles to wrap in to the section here. So just wrap around and then tie on, and this is why I wanted you to tie these quick links singly, because there's more tension at that point than there is at the connection here. And then do the same thing here, just wrap into that top layer a couple of times, then find a neck and nozzle and tie on. And I do tend to tie these twice. Okay. So that's what you've got. Take the tips of the blush quick links and just push the air out as best you can, and then stretch them over next to one another, wrap around. There's quite a bit of tension on those, so I like to wrap around twice if I can, and then tie and tie twice. Okay, take the hat and wrap a 260 into that first cluster. You want to tie it on too, but I've just let go of the nuts and nozzles, so I can't do that. So I'm just going to wrap into the upper cluster a little bit more, okay? But hopefully you've not done what I've done and you've hung on to yours, okay? So take that strap, wrap it through the center of the quick links, the blush quick links, pull that into that first cluster, wrap around a couple of times if you want to. You can go up into that next cluster and then take the 260 back down and go in between those two blush quick links again and back up, wrap around, okay. And we can take that back down. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this because we want to attach a little bit, or I want to attach a bit of decoration to the hat. So I'm going to leave that there, and that's my connection point for later. Okay, so we can turn everything around, and this is what we've got. And we're going to connect the quick links into this side, the side of the cheeks. So this first cluster, wrap around a couple of times, find a nozzle to tie onto, okay, and then we're going to pull this into the cluster just above the head, just above the face. So just pull that in, wrap around a couple of times and tie on to a nozzle. Whatever you can find to tie onto. Oops. Okay, and do the same thing on the other side here. Okay, so that's what you've got. Take a 321 in white. If you don't have any of these, you can use 350s. Okay, so I like to push this as far down onto the hand pump as I can. I do tend to use the hand pump to inflate these unless I'm inflating a lot. Okay, so that's about the size I want. Okay, and make another one of these. Tie the two together. Take the moustache and just pass underneath the nose. Okay. So this design does tend to curl up and contract inwards as we build out the design. So that's actually what we want. 260 in white. Don't need all of that. Let's just tie a knot. So we're going to be making the eyes. So make a 3-finger bubble and then make another one to match. Okay, just bend those two over, wrap around, pass that knot and nozzle through the centre. Okay, so that's what you've got. And then we can trim off the ends. And I'm going to tie that onto the neck and nozzle there. Inflate a 160. I'm using Mocha. Okay, and twist a bubble that is between 2 to 3 fingers, and then make another bubble to match. Okay, fold the 2 bubbles over, wrap around a couple of times, and then take that knot and nozzle, wrap it through the centre a couple of times, and that's a really easy way to pinch twist 2 bubbles at the beginning of a balloon. Snip off the end because we don't need it, and I like to then tie that onto the knot and nozzle. Pass that bit of excess through the centre of the 2 bubbles, the 2 white bubbles. Okay. There we go. And pass the bit of excess brown. In fact, maybe we should have left a little longer section there. I always forget to do that. So if you, when you're making yours, don't cut yours off so short. And pass that bit of excess through the 2 blush quick links into the back and into that cluster of 5. Just wrap around. Just everything. I'm going to just trim off the Mocha Brown nozzle, and I'm now going to trim off the end of the white 260. I don't need it, and the nozzle of the white 260. So that's what you've got. Inflated 260 all the way. Let the air out. I've got my hand pump and I've got a 260 tied to it, and I'm just going to put that 260, the tip underneath, and then I'm going to wrap this 260 around. It's important that you keep the 260 very flat and that there are no folds or twists in the balloon. And I do that by turning and rotating the hand pump, and then I'm going to put this back onto my pump and inflate. Okay, there we go. I can let a little bit of air out and tie. Okay, so you can have tighter curls, you can have soft curls. We want fairly soft curls for this design. If you want a tighter curl, you can wrap onto something that is much smaller than this. Next, I'm taking a 160 in gold, and I'm just putting the tiniest amount of air in there, tying that. Okay, so we've just put a very small amount of air in there, and I'm going to use this to just give add a bit more interest to the eyes. So I'm just going to wrap this little bit of 160 around the eyes, just to measure, and put a twist there. And then at this point, I'm going to trim off the rest of the balloon and tie at that point. Okay. And then we can tie the two ends together. And we can trim off the excess. Okay, but make sure you don't cut your knots around the eyes with the knots at the bottom. Okay. If you find that your loop is a little bit bigger than you expected, you can just pull it down and tuck it under the eyes, the white parts of the eyes. Next, take one of your curls and just make a small loop of perhaps 3 fingers, followed by another small loop. And take that knot and nozzle, wrap it through just to help ensure that doesn't come undone. And then where we've got the quick links here, you can just pass those 2 loops, well, you can pass 1 loop in between the quick links and then just wrap those 2 loops around to secure that curl in position. And we can do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to take the tip and wrap it into the base here. And then I shall try and find a neck and nozzle to tie onto, and then just find somewhere where this is going to sit happily. So I tend to like to try and follow the curve of the 260 if I can, so I'm just going to wrap this one in here. So each one of these turns out differently because we're not exactly placing these curls, so yours will look slightly different to mine, but we just want to fill out this area with beard. I'm going to wrap this end into the 2 loops, wrap this around the loop that's already there, and I'm going to fasten that into the top cluster here. In fact, I'm going to fasten that into this cluster here. I'm actually going to wrap this one around rather than tie in. I've got plenty of tip to do that. I'm wrapping another 260 into those 2 loops there. I'm going to take the tip and wrap it underneath the moustache, in between the quick links, into the back, and wrap around there a couple of times just to secure it. And I can let go. Let's have a look at Santa. And then this one I'm going to wrap into the cluster here. And then I'm just going to take it underneath here and wrap it into the other side of the same cluster. Where's the end gone? And just wrap that tip around a few times. Okay, let's have a look. And you can just keep continuing to add curls and loops, as many as you wish. I've got a 260 that I've inflated to a 2-finger tail. I'm just going to soften that a little bit and tie. And then I'm going to put this underneath. This is going to be the brim of Santa's hat. So we're just going to wrap it round a little bit, and I just need to take a closer look at what I'm doing. Okay, and then at the back here, we can twist off a loop and just pass that neck and nozzle through. And then on the other side, we can do the same thing. So just give that a bit of a squeeze. We can do the same thing on the other side and just tie that off. Okay. And we can just twist those two loops together. We can take the tail, wrap it round, okay? And that just all disappears into the beard area at the back or the hair area. Okay, so that's what you've got so far. I've inflated a 260 in reflex green to a tail of maybe 4 or 5 fingers, and I'm just going to make some small loops of about 3 fingers. Pass that knot and nozzle through. That's just going to help secure it. Just make sure the loop doesn't come undone. So another loop of about 3 fingers. Take that neck and nozzle, wrap it around, bit of a squeeze. Another loop of about 3 fingers, and just wrap those all around. Okay. We can snip off the end and tie. I've got just the tip of a bit of rose gold, 260. Okay, so I'm just twisting off a bubble there, letting it down, and wrapping that into the centre. Okay, so it's not the traditional holly colour, but I think it goes better with this design. Okay, and make however many more of these you want to add to your display. I like to add a bit of holly to Santa's hat here. I'm just going to use a bit of excess. I did save a bit of a tail, didn't I? But I can't find it, so I'm just going to use this. Oh, and now it's appeared. Okay. Just when you need it. Okay, there you go. That's secured in there. I also like to add some to the beard, and I'm just going to use this strap and loosely wrap it around. That's going to be enough to secure that. And then let's just add a bit of colour to Santa's nose with these blushes. So the reason I apply with my finger is if you use a brush, the powder goes everywhere. So I tend to just use my finger. You can blend the powder into the colour that you want. This is one of those designs that you can have a lot of fun with. It looks very different in different colourways. So I've really enjoyed making this tutorial for you. I hope you've enjoyed watching.